to Afro-Picks, brought to you by the Caribbean Cultural Center, African Diaspora Institute. What's Afro-Picks? Afro-Picks is our virtual talk series where we sit down with filmmakers of the African diaspora to explore their process in films. My name is DJ, and I'm your host with most of the most. And before we even begin to dive in, I have to let you all know that none of this is ever possible without your help. These programs cannot go on without you, all right? So if you can please think about donating today, here's how.
In the spirit of giving in what has been a very difficult year, we want to encourage you to make a donation to CCCADI in support of our programs that continue to celebrate and protect our culture, our traditions, and our communities. We ask you to go to cccadi.org to make a donation. All contributions are greatly appreciated, and we thank you in advance for your support.
Now let's bring in today's mastermind queen behind today's film things, Elyssa.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on board, Elyssa. I am super excited to dive into today's film, which is Secadora, okay? Now, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the film? Can you introduce the film for us?
Sure. So Secadora is a love story, New York love story about these two girls who are kind of just having a date together, and then things get like really weird, and they have a really big disagreement. And so, yeah, my name's Elyssa. I'm from the Bronx. I'm out here just making movies. And so this is one of my first shorts, Secadora.
All right, Elyssa from the Bronx, out here making movies. Secadora, we love it. We love it. Now, I'm the type of person that when I dive into a film, before I even begin watching it, I like to like analyze the title. And I looked up Secadora. And I found that it translated into like drying machine or like dryer, right? Does that English translation accurately match up with what you intended? And if not, then why did you name it Secadora?
Totally. I'm the same way. I like look into movie titles very heavily. And so I appreciate you caught that, because the movie is about like this drying machine that in a lot of Dominican households, we like kind of have this machine just like in our grandma's living room, like just constantly there. And so for me, it kind of symbolizes like this constant need to like almost expected to like whitewash ourselves, right? Growing up in our community, having this feeling of like, I have to straighten my hair, you know, I have bad hair, whatever that means. And so I think that's what my film really is about. It's about the Dominican identity and what that feels like, and people's journeys in that. And so, yeah, it is very, very foreshadowing of what the film is about.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And I'm hearing you say that going back to the whole like straightening of hair thing. So it's not the drying machine that washes the clothes. It's like an actual hair dryer, like a straightener, a presser, whatever it's called, that type of machine, that type of drying machine. I think that that's genius, and it definitely aligns with everything or some of the things that we are about to see, which I also wanted to know, what communities and intersections do you represent, and how do those transmute into Secadora?
Absolutely. So I identify as being Afro-Latina, and I think it really is what my film is about. Both of our characters are Afro-Latina, and that is really, the whole film is really about that experience, like what I grew up with and my community, and how just trying to be as authentic as possible to like my journey. And so for both characters, you know, one identifies as Afro-Latina and the other one really does not. And so there is a point in the film where they have this really uncomfortable conversation, and they both really can't see each other's view. And I feel like that happens a lot in our community, where people are just, you know, going through their own identity journeys, and it's very unclear, you know, with all of our history in DR. I think there's a lot of misinformation about what the African diaspora is and where our ancestry comes from. And so, yeah, you're just taken through that experience.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you're absolutely right. It is a thing that's like happening within like our like era right now, where everyone is on this journey of just like self-discovery and like self-identity and like trying to just figure out ourselves before we figure out the world, you know. And this movie does take us through this day where these two people are kind of having these conversations, and it's so interesting because they're very transparent and communicative about one aspect of their identity, but not the other. They tend to lack a little bit of patience when it comes to the other side of this double-edged sword that I do want to talk about later on. But first and foremost, let's just dive into our first clip and see how this goes.
Come on.
Okay, so I usually don't do this. Like, I just don't go around having sex with my photographer. Oh my God. You're gonna think I'm a hoe. Like, just say it.
First of all, stop, because the word hoe is way too basic. We might be little thotties, but definitely not hoes. We're just two girls that kind of like each other. What's wrong with that?
We do. And I did have fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a couple of things I want to touch on here. First of all, these actresses are giving body adi. We love it. You know what I'm saying? The lighting on their skin looks phenomenal. Like this scene is just giving me everything that I need. How did you go about finding that space and like working with the lighting and all those things? Like, how did this image come into play?
So I'm so glad you said that. Well, first of all, shout out to my actresses, Shayla and Talisha. They are incredible. Yes. So it was very easy to make them look gorgeous because they're stunning. Yes. And so lighting, obviously I worked with the amazing, like my DP and all my gaffers, just incredible at what they do. And so for us, we just wanted to keep it really like minimal and simple and just very authentic. So it was just like as natural as possible, like light, just keep it natural. And so the space is actually interesting because the space has a lot of like white art. When I first saw it, I was a little like, when I saw, you know, I was renting out spaces and I was like, well, this is bizarre, right? This is like very, you know, white bodies everywhere and I'm not making that movie. But then I thought, well, this might work out because it is this hovering feeling of, I don't want to say white supremacy, but like, again, the theme, right? Of like hiding our true selves. And it's like, it makes people question it. And I thought it was an interesting symbolic choice. I said, let's actually go with that. It's very odd. And let's just get the audience attention immediately. Like, these are not white women. These are brown and black women. So what's happening here?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's genius what you did, because you almost kind of think, and you almost feel bad for doing it, right? But you almost kind of think like whose apartment of this is this? You know, like which one of them can afford this? Like blah blah blah. Like all these different questions automatically start to come up in your mind, and you hear immediately that one's a photographer, so then the other one must be a model, and you know what I mean. So very well done on that aspect. The other thing that I want to get in about this scene is this this discussion about a hoe versus a thought. So they come in very quick with this conversation, right? And you kind of immediately begin to see the natural perspectives of these characters and where their heads lie. Now, in this ever-growing fluidity of our current society, why was it important for you to include this comment on identity? And does your personal perspective align with what they think when it comes between a hoe and a thought?
Yeah, sure. So my favorite part, literally, when I go, this is how we talk. Like, this is how my girlfriends talk. I think it's like just the constant, I think the whole movie is really about identity. Like, us women, we're always searching for like, are we hoes? Are we thoughts? Like, questioning ourselves, questioning our motives, just this constant battle within yourself. I think it's nice to just throw it in there immediately. This isn't about race. This is first, these two women are together. And so what's that experience like? And so, yeah, you know, being a hoe, being a thought, what does that even mean? Like, you know? And so one of them is the more insecure character who is kind of like always trying to figure it out. And the other girl is a little more sure of herself. But she's also living in this apartment that is not necessarily her identity either. So I wanted to make them both very flawed in that way. So neither one is completely right.
I love that. I love that. Let's move over into our next clip.
Wait. Is that supposed to be twerking?
Yes, sis.
Come on, babe, no. Wait, you take one of the rolos and you roll it all the way back, and don't forget the pinchos.
No, but that's it.
I'll do that instead. Huh?
Yeah. No. Look how dumb I look.
No, you don't.
And then look how we messed up my hair, sis. No, we're keeping it curly, we're keeping it natural, and we're just gonna embrace that.
Now, there are several layered moments that happen that take us into the inner workings of Laura's mind that Cynthia ignores. And this was definitely one of them for me. This is a moment that really bubbles up to the climax. And although the important conversation could have happened here, we see it swept away in a moment of lust. So what I want to know is, what was the inspiration behind this transition in moment? And not to get too personal, but do you have experience, or have you often witnessed important conversations be swept away in lust? Because I was like, my life, you know what I mean? Like up until a couple of years ago. But, you know, there's plenty of times when we need to have very important discussions, and then it's kind of just like, but I'm here with this person, and let me just not ruin the moment, you know? So yeah, what was the inspiration behind including this transition, this moment?
Yeah, I think it's just like what you said. It's like we get these red flags from people. I've had those. I'm sure everybody can relate to this. You find this person and then you're just letting these red flags go, or not even red flags. I would say just like ignoring these hard topics. And we do it to ourselves constantly. And what I love about that scene, it's so therapeutic for me to like watch this film again, because it just keeps refreshing my memory. But I just love like everything seems great, but then there's this really dark music playing, like hinting like things are not this great. Something's happening right now, and I do love that she's like teaching her how to use these rollers, and she's like, no, like this isn't me. And so yeah, I'm into it. Yeah, I love watching this again. This is
no, definitely. And you hinted on, I wanted to touch on the underscore music as well. I wanted to know how you decided to use that for that moment also. But before I get there, touching upon this whole thing with Dominican culture and the curly hair, right? Because I have lots of Dominican friends also, and one in particular, she still gets a lot of flack from her family that is specifically still in DR, because she perpetually just wears her hair curly. Like that's her natural state, right? So in this moment where, you know, one of the girls kind of like checks the other, why don't we get to see a response? You know what I mean? Like the moment does turn, like it gets a little bit snippy, and it could possibly go like that could be the end of the day, but we don't hear a response. You know what I mean? And why did you choose to leave that response out?
Yeah, you know, I almost feel like this is sadly the norm. People constantly talk about your hair and what you should do with your hair, and you constantly let it go. And I don't think it's very out of character for her and for our community. It's like, you know, when your aunt and uncles are like, you know, you have bad hair, you should straighten it. You just constantly like push it, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
And then like eventually I feel like you do snap. And if you don't snap, you're just this person who has identity issues, or you're really insecure, or the other way, you educate yourself and I don't know. I never really thought about why I didn't allow her to really speak her truth in that moment. And I think maybe it's because I've seen myself in that character as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that does make a lot of sense, and that absolutely tracks. Going to the music and that feeling of having something brew and bubble underneath the surface. What landed you on that particular sound?
Sure. I really wanted something. So I feel like the whole film, I wanted it to feel like art. So I didn't want any like heavy music, but I just wanted very, very interesting instruments that are like complex and complicated. I'm pretty sure that music track is called like complex music, literally.
Oh, wow.
Sure. But yeah, complex emotions, meeting someone for like getting to know someone for the first time and not really knowing where it's going. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, before this moment, there's the Christopher Columbus comment. And although, you know, Cynthia always kind of like claps back in her own way, these moments also raise those questions of like, what's worth fighting for and like what's worth letting go. Would you agree with that? And I'm hearing that in your personal experience, right? There have been moments when you kind of just like let the things go, but how do you decide when it's the time to fight and when it's the time to not? Especially in a movie like this, where it's just like one day and these characters kind of like just met and they're trying to like find a vibe.
Oh, that's a hard question. Like, what's the time to let go, and what's your boundary where you should be able to walk away? Because everyone should walk away when they're uncomfortable. And so I think that's literally why I made the film. I don't know.
No, I mean, and that's exciting.
Yeah, like I don't know. And so I think the Christopher Columbus comment, for me, it's very dark. If someone called me Christopher Columbus as like a cute flirtatious thing, I'd be like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
He's still trying to talk to this girl. She's still letting that go because sadly, I don't know. I feel like in our community, sometimes you let those comments constantly pass by. Yet again, you know, we're always like finding excuses to like let people talk this way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like glorifying Christopher Columbus, it's probably the darkest part of the film for me.
Yep.
Because it's very weird. And I think that really takes a turn for like a viewer. If they didn't get it before, they would get it at that moment. This is weird. Like something up here that is
something's afoot. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. It is a moment where you're kind of like, you know, and then Cynthia does say, you know, she does clap back in her own little way. But, you know, when you think about Laura, you're like, where did that even come from? You know?
Where did that come from? Exactly.
Amazing. So what I also wanted to know within that moment was, where do you feel like the reason why sometimes, you know, Cynthia, and as she represents like a lot of us, right? Do you kind of feel like the reason why we tend to let these moments kind of just like happen and stack up on each other is because there's this like underlying feeling where it's like, it's hard to find love in our community?
Ooh. It is. Yeah, I think it is hard to find a deep connection with just living in our age, like in our generation. It is hard to find love because sometimes you just tolerate so much because you're in desperate need of like that companionship. It's easy to feel isolated in our generation too, and obviously after the pandemic as well. I mean, our generation has been through a lot. Like we are traumatized, and so at this point, I know some people will just accept anybody that's like just there.
Right.
So I did make this film during the pandemic, and it was just like I was kind of in a dark place where I was watching a lot of things on the internet at that time, and I was watching like I was for the cancel culture, so I was out there like canceling everybody. I was like, he's canceled, she's canceled, and then yeah, and then I started thinking, well, you know, there should be a little tolerance. And if there is, not necessarily go out and date this person, but being able to have a conversation, that's how people change, is just through education and through having real conversations. And the lack of like patience that our generation has had, like from recently, from what I've seen, I've kind of like taken a step back from that cancel culture, and I'm starting to see people for their flawed selves. And when it comes to something like identity, and I think that our character, she's absolutely ignorant. She's ignorant in so many ways. It's very obviously she's not educated. But is she a bad person? I don't think she's a bad person.
Exactly.
And so I think with those conversations, it could have been met maybe with patience from both of them. Maybe they both would have learned something. But yet, you know, they just walk away and pretend like they never knew each other. But for reasons that are actually understandable too, right? I mean, I can't say I wouldn't do the same. I would. I would.
Because we're also in an era where a lot of us are being very conscious about our energy. So it's kind of like, do I feel like expelling any unnecessary energy on this person that I just met today? You know, like I don't have to change their life, you know, or have mine changed, you know. Oh, I get it. I completely get it. Let's definitely dive into our next clip.
What does the way I view myself have anything to do with it? And if I don't view myself as a Black woman, why does that bother you? Like, you're a gay Dominican woman. You cannot pass judgment on people. You should know better.
But this is different.
How is this different? You're being a hypocrite.
Can I just explain to you that when you walk into a room, all they see is a Black woman? It honestly just even makes me so uncomfortable to be having this conversation with you. Like, it almost seems like you're whitewashing yourself.
Wait, what the fuck? Whitewashing?
Yes, whitewashing.
I am not whitewashing myself, so correct yourself. And you cannot sit here and call me a fucking racist. I thought I was having an honest fucking conversation with a friend, a fuck buddy, or whatever the fuck I thought this was, but clearly that was a motherfucking mistake.
I'm not even accusing you of being a racist. What I am calling out is your ignorance. Clearly, I did not even want this conversation to go like this.
So why can't you just fucking drop it?
I bet I'll drop it.
Okay then.
Wow.
Yeah. That moment. So as I was saying earlier, right, we both agree this film is absolutely about identity, but it is this double-edged sword in this particular film, because they're very comfortable with conversations and transparency around, you know, them knowing exactly what they are to each other and what they are not, until the villain appears. And I feel like much like generational trauma was like the villain in like Encanto, right? I feel like the villain in this film dynamic here seems to be, you know, like race and ethnicity. Would you agree that that is how most relationship woes pan out? Like when certain dualities within identity tend to come up, it's kind of just like, all right, well, I accepted this part of us, but like, if you're not getting with this, then I gotta walk.
I do. I think that, you know, identity can be in any form. And I think that relationships typically do end within because of that reason. And yeah, I think these characters, I mean, watching that again, oh my God, that was so intense. And the girls, really, actresses really got into it. Yep. Yeah, it's just constantly like that discussion I've seen so many times within my community. You will see people that are absolutely, you have no doubt that they are Black. And you will see them say they are not Black. Yeah. And it's just this, it is something that you really want to walk away from, especially when you do have the knowledge. You're just like, I can't handle this. Like, this is too stupid for me to even have this conversation. Like, now I'm getting upset. So yeah, I just felt like it was really important to just show the realness of that moment, because it happens all the time. And it's also very taboo in our community to talk about it. I feel like people just stray away from that conversation in general, and also sexuality as well.
Yep. Now, on that note, right, within that scene, I took a moment to jump into the mindset of Laura, because I do this with myself, right? I like to play devil's advocate with myself. I like to examine both sides of the playing field, and, you know, like, see what's what. And Laura's response is, you know, I kind of was like, now hold on for a minute. She kind of has a point, you know, even though we all know that that Cynthia is coming from, even though they just met, I feel like Cynthia is coming from this place where it's like, girl, you were so perfect up until now. And I want to kind of have this conversation because I want to preserve that perfect vision that I had of you. But like you said, it's just like too much for her, right? But Laura's kind of just like, hey, why are you making this such a big deal when it's how I identify? You know, she's kind of just like, this is me, this is my life. I'm not coming at you for identifying as Afro-Latina, so why are you coming so hard at me for not? You know? And so I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about how you even concocted that perspective for Laura, and does it come from anybody real that you know, or like just where did Laura come from in your life?
So I truly believe I was both characters at one point of my life, and yeah. I was Laura and I was Cynthia. You know, I remember being young and not even knowing there was slavery that existed in the Dominican Republic, and finding that out like late in high school and being like, what? I just thought I was Dominican. Yeah. And that is like, that's crazy that I could, you know, 17 years old, you never gave it a thought, right? It's like something that is really not communicated in our community. And so when I see this character, I don't think she's a bad person. I think she's very ignorant. And so I wanted to show this person that was just really, really like had no like lack of information, really. Maybe a lack of conversations like that. And so I also have been the other character where it's like, absolutely not. Like, I don't have any tolerance for this anymore. I'm too grown, too old to be handled, like to just hear family members or friends or people on the internet just talk in this way, which is essentially rooted in racism. Yeah. And so I've been both those characters in my life. And I think a lot of people don't like admitting that. And I think that it's important for her not to seem like a villain. And so I think for that scene, you can sympathize with her a little bit. Like, what does it matter? You know, my identity shouldn't be you. And so I think they're both flawed, maybe one more than the other, but I think that there's flaws in both of them.
It's so mystical hearing you say that Laura is basically like your younger thoughts, right? Because like now I'm like replaying that scene in my head, and like how meta is it for for the interpretation of that scene to be your younger self arguing with your older self, you know, like the you that you keep saying just didn't have that knowledge, arguing with the you that now knows all these things and has no patience for who you were when you were younger. There's something about that that's just like so mystical to me, and it makes me raise the question of where do you think a you in like 10 years might be in your mind when you go back and you look at these previous versions of you and this topic? Like, where do you think you might expand to?
Woo, I don't know. Oh my goodness. So for me, it's just important to do what I feel at the moment. And so I could only imagine how much will change in like 10 years. I'll probably make another movie about whatever it is I'm identifying as.
Right.
But
Yeah.
At this point of my life, I feel really like self-aware, and I don't think anything will drastically change. So, but it is bizarre seeing that or being that open. Like when I was writing, it was very therapeutic writing that because I didn't even know what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then I realized, are you writing about your younger, ignorant self? Like, are you writing about your high school self? And then I realized, you know, sharing this story, I think the feedback was so incredible because everybody, people like, you know, Dominicans, girls were hitting me up and they were like, oh my God, like this is my life. Like those two people, I know those girls.
Yep.
And like, wow, this is really not just me. This is like for everybody, you know, identity. It's not just being Dominican. It's about just being colonized, right? A place where you were colonized and all that history that comes with it still affects us in just more ways than we accept, I think, or at least are aware of. And it's hard. And so it's all just a constant journey of figuring out who you are and just being your authentic self, I think, is what I was really trying to accept. And so, yeah, it is crazy. It is.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And you started to touch on it a little bit, but what do you specifically want your community to walk away from this movie with? And is that any different than what you might want people outside of the community to walk away with?
So I think I would want my community to walk away with being seen, I think. Watching this, feeling seen, seeing these brown women and that are the leads and not like supporting characters, but like, look at that. Like, look at these actresses. They look like me and they sound like me and they're from New York. So that's what I really wanted to do, is just make something super authentic and feel like the story was realistic. And I also always want to leave with people feeling a little more educated. I'm always like, in everything that I do, I'm just like, here's a little information, like, and also make people a little uncomfortable too. I think in our community, like, people still are, it's very taboo to talk about sexuality and race. And so for what? Why? Like, let's talk about it. Let's really dive into this.
And I feel like that's something that this film did really, really well, to the fact that, like, I don't know, like, there's sometimes throughout this movie that I even forget that they're gay, you know what I mean? Because I feel like in their world, that part of their identity, they're so comfortable with it, you know what I mean? Like, they're at the place in their lives where they're so comfortable with who they are in their sexuality, that all the problems come from the race and the ethnicity, you know what I mean? But like, fantastic job, like, creating a world that kind of almost seems like gay is inherently okay, you know what I mean? Which we know it is. But you know, like, it's the sexuality in this movie is so comforting, you know. The way that they look is so tasteful, it's so classy, even though we're seeing their bodies and like things like that, which, you know, some people might be like, oh, you know, like, that's too much or whatever. No, it's done very beautifully. Like you said, this film is art, You know what I mean? Like they themselves look like art. The scenery looks like art. The lighting looks like everything does just look like art, really down to the music. So amazing job on that.
Thank you. Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I don't know if we touched it a little bit, but just speaking about these actresses, I did want to know specifically how the casting process went. Like, how did you land on them?
So I think that I had one actress in my mind the whole time.
Okay.
So her name is Talisha, and so she's always been just an actress that I really admired. And I knew that when I was writing the script, she was the voice in my head. So I knew I always wanted to work with her and cast her. I thought to myself, there's no other person that could play this role.
Yeah.
So casting her partner, that took a while because the chemistry had to be there. And because we really just wanted her to connect with someone who she felt comfortable with, and who it felt very real. And so finding Shayla was like the greatest thing that happened to this film because she just fit perfectly. And she, most importantly, I wanted the girls to like have an actual feeling about the script that is actually like true to themselves and like something they're passionate about. Because I didn't want to just get an actress who's like playing this role and like she's never even thought about being an Afro-Latino and she's never even thought about being Black. I was like, no, I want like the actors to connect with this story and like give more than just the writing, like bring your own experience to the role too. And so, yeah, that just worked out perfectly. Both of them are amazing.
Yeah, they really are. Like the moments are, y'all got to watch this movie. The moments are so phenomenal. Like I was like, to be a fly on the wall of like production would have been like everything. Cause I'm like, wow, they are like really in these moments. Like it's so beautiful. Do you have a favorite like quote or line from the film or like a moment that like just really impacted you like as a viewer when you were watching it?
Wow. I mean, well, now watching it, the thought the hoe or thought comment is actually so amazing to me.
Yep.
That might be my favorite because it's just like being a woman and just like these constant struggles, but also like being funny and quirky. But yeah, I'm sure there's so many. Honestly, I don't know any of the at the top of my head, but
no, I mean that moment is lovely for me as well. You know what I mean? Like because like you said, I think it's just so relatable to who we are today. You know, as we are all discovering like this fluidity that was always dormant within us. I think a lot of us are questioning, you know, that traditional word, you know, like hoe and slamming it against, you know, in more recent terms, you know, like being a thought, which was really like emphasized, and you know, we were really kind of like going for, you know, being that thing, you know. So I can definitely, that's definitely a fan, and I think that it also shows like the humor within, you know, like Cynthia, you know, because she does come off as a little hard like toward the end, rightfully so, standing up for her beliefs, but she's lighter in the beginning. So we do see her arc, we do see her the roller coaster of her emotions, which I think is also fantastic. There was something for me at the end during their like final moment when Cynthia said, when you walk into a room, all they see is a Black woman. And even though like I understand, you know, the difference. I know that, you know, like a lot of like I know that Dominicans are Black. I have a lot of like Dominican friends that always like relay like these conversations to me, and we talk about what their family thinks versus what they're going through and all that jazz. But something about that line really kind of like pushed a button on my perspective. You know, it was like, wow, like that really is it, you know, like that really is it in a nutshell. Like that's the elevator pitch. It's like when you walk into a room, people see a Black woman, you know, so like how could you not? So yeah, great job on that. Any thoughts behind placing that line in there? Like, what did that line mean for you when you put it in there?
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love this. This is like really getting into exactly why I wrote this. I asked myself,
Right.
why did I write this? No, I think that that was very personal line for me because growing up in New York, everybody knows like what a Dominican is, right? Over here, there's not too much ignorance because we all know everybody comes in different ethnicities and different cultures, communities. But I remember moving to LA when I was younger and people just not knowing and like being confused, like why I spoke Spanish, Black. And then I was like, yeah, I am Black. And then I thought to myself, I just never experienced so much racism, I think, until I left New York, where people were kind of like, you know, that token Black girl at work, where it's like, she knows what to, let's bring her in these meetings and then let's see what her opinions are of rap and all. It was just something that I was truly shocked about. And for me, I just never experienced racism in that way. Yeah. And I think that's when I knew this movie was always going to happen. I just didn't know how it would come out.
Yeah.
And so I really felt like that line is really powerful. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's super powerful. I feel like it's almost like the crux of their conversation. You know, it's almost like the crux of the film. Very, very well done. What was the toughest part of directing this short film?
I think the toughest part for me was just like the internal battle. Like, can I make this film? Like, does my voice belong? Is this story even important? Like, who's gonna like this? No one's gonna watch this. No one's gonna relate besides this like tiny part of New York. I was like, who am I like worthy of telling this story? I think a lot of women of color behind the camera struggle with this. It's because of our industry. It's just very like white male dominated. And so just constantly like, is this worth investing in myself money-wise, the energy of writing a story like this, and also like the backlash. I thought my own community was gonna hate it. I was like, ooh, this fine line of like calling people out. And sometimes people don't respond really well to that. So I think it was just a battle within myself. And then I thought, you know what? I just gotta write this because this is the truth of what lives in my brain. And that's all I can do. And I feel like I'd be doing a disservice making another film to people before me, like, or people after me, sorry, like women after me that want to make films similar experiences. And, you know, just not being able to see a film like this, I think it's nice to just see it and feel like I could write this too. Like my story doesn't matter. So yeah, it was a struggle. It was a struggle mentally for sure.
That's so interesting, and I thank you for your bravery on multiple fronts. You know, for fighting with yourself and getting the story out, because it is very important. And I think even though I am not an Afro-Latina, you know, or like a woman, I feel like it hits home for like a lot of your community. And I know that it changed my perspective in a lot of ways as well, even if it's just like that one line, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I gain an extra tool for me to have conversations with other people, you know? So I really do thank you for that. Do you have any advice for future filmmakers that might be scared to start, or that might be going through the same mental battles that you were going through during your process?
For sure. Oh, I think that dark place that you're in, you know, wherever it is, if it's in the writer's room or if it's like behind the camera, I think you just got to trust your gut and just do it. Like, go to that place that scares you, because a lot of writing is, if it's scary, that means you're touching on something that actually matters. And I think a lot of my films, they're scary for me to write. Like, I always have that moment where I'm like, I shouldn't do this. And then I'm like, well, isn't this the point, to like make people question reality and like the world that they exist and just pop people's bubbles and enter them into like our own perspective. And not everybody has to like your film too. That's another, like, I do this for people that I know will relate and enjoy it. I'm not doing this for like the people that aren't claiming their Blackness. I'm doing this for like my community. And I think as long as I would enjoy watching it, then that's all that matters.
There you go. There you go. I absolutely love that. Elyssa, thank you so much for joining us here at our virtual talk series today. Your film is amazing. Everybody, please go and watch Secadora, okay? Like, I dare I say life-changing, because you really did flip a perspective for me, and I really do thank you for that. Her Instagram is below, as you can see. Elyssa, have a great, great day. Thank you so, so much. And everybody, that was today's Afro-Pick. See you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye, Elyssa.